Welcome to the Growth Buyer Podcast, where we engage with top business leaders who share their experiences and provide real insights that help them attract customers, retain staff, and grow their bottom line. Now, let's get started with the show. Hi there, I'm Mark Reifnath, the host of the show, where I feature inspiring business leaders from various backgrounds and industries willing to share their perspectives on healthy cultures and motivated teams. Past guests include Cynthia Cleveland, a great leader and a great YPO servant leader. If you haven't listened to that episode, I would highly recommend it. This episode is brought to you by Spinutech. Spinutech is a premium digital growth agency that specializes in revitalizing lead generation strategies and accelerating online sales for top brands. To learn more, go to spinutech.com. Today, we've got a really good guest I'm super excited about. Thayer Smith, a highly accomplished executive with 25 years of experience as an operating partner at Bayshore Capital, possesses expertise in transformative change, team building, strategic planning, and collaborative management. As the CEO of YPO, Thayer's extensive background uniquely positions him to drive the organization towards continued success while providing valuable insights. Thayer, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. And I gave you a little bit of a warning, but the first question, it's a bit of a softball, but it's a really fun one. You wake up in the morning, you're walking to your desk. What's that walk-up song playing in your head every morning?
Yeah, well, thanks, Mark. I'm glad to be here. So I was a music major in college. And so, music is kind of always in my head. So I was thinking about this one. I think there's one called The Feeling by the Ministry of Funk, which is kind of a fun one. And then, the other one, I was just listening to the car this morning. It's called "I'm Good" by David Guetta, and that one's kind of a fun one as well. So,
awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. Everybody's got a little bit of different flavor, but I think that's great. It's a way to show personality. And I always say it. My lovely day is kind of my go-to, but depending on what challenges or fires you got to put out on the day, I might adjust it just a little bit. So, all right. So, you've got an interesting journey with YPO. Obviously, you're the sitting CEO now, but I'd like to rewind a little bit and let's go back in time. How did you first learn about YPO? Where were you at business wise, and what was that early impact for you?
Yeah, it was interesting. So I worked for a private equity firm in Atlanta called Quest Capital, and it was sort of part private equity and part family office, kind of before they were called family offices. And it was a couple that were members of YPO. And so it was Yum Arnold and Ross Arnold. I worked for Ross. My wife actually worked for Yum for a little while and was, Yum was definitely one of her mentors. And Yum was actually the member. And she's still active in business. I think she's currently the vice chair of the Atlanta Fed. And, I always knew they would talk about YPO. They would talk about, I'd hear about Forum and I would see them going to Forum, and you would talk about, a lot of the events. I actually helped them plan they were on some committee with one of the big universities at the time. And so I kind of knew about it, but I didn't know exactly what YPO was about. And when I sort of went out on my own and started running a manufacturing company, one of the local guys reached out to me, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I know about YPO." So I wanted to learn more about that. But it's been one of the greatest things that I've ever done. I joined in 2003, so I was 33, and I think it was exactly what I needed at the time.
That's awesome. So you got in pretty young. You probably know the average entry age, but I think I was 40. I was right over 40 when I joined, and I wish I would have had it when I was 33.
Yeah, the average age is actually around 41 or 42, and we just did this analysis. We went back to the year 2000, and it was sort of one of those interesting things, because there's sort of this notion that YPO used to be younger, and it really hasn't been. We've really historically been in that sweet spot of around 40, 41, 42.
Mm-hmm.
Our youngest member today is 21 years old, which is amazing.
I just saw the video of him and our oldest member who happened to live in the same region, and they were able to get together.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
I got a call from Lauren, who runs our concierge or customer care group. And she told me, she's like, I just got this call from this 94-year-old member. And he just wanted to make sure that he renewed his membership. And she was like,
Yeah.
I thought it was so amazing that I wanted to call you and tell you. And so I was sitting there with Paula Zyber. I don't know if you know her. She works with me, and so I was like, Paula, who's our youngest member? And she said, it's this guy named Will. He lives in Indianapolis, Indiana. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. So who's our actual oldest member? And she said, it's this guy named Bob. He's 98 years old, lives in Indianapolis, Indiana. It's like, that's amazing. We got to get them together. And so we sent out a film crew, and they did a great job putting that together. But it's a neat story. One of the things that was striking about it to me is that even though there's a really large difference in age, the way they describe YPO and what they needed at the time and what they'd been getting out of it is almost exactly the same. And to me, that's the thing that just makes YPO so special, is that there's this continuous thread through, multiple generations. We'll be 75 years old in 2025. And, the core of how it was started and why it was started is still 100% relevant today. Now, the way in which we deliver it will be different, and the way that we consume it maybe is different, but the core hasn't changed. And it's also amazing that Will is 21 years old and qualifies for YPO. He started that business when he was in high school. I mean, that's an amazing story just in itself.
Yes. That was the first question I asked. I was like, holy cow, 21 and he qualified. That's
and what's really amazing is it's not like it's a tech company. It's a site construction company. So it's capital intensive, it's labor intensive. Those aren't easy businesses to start and run.
Yeah, so, for sure.
That's impressive.
So, are you still in the same forum you were from when you were 33? Have you gone through multiple forums? What's your forum journey look like?
Yeah, so it's been pretty consistent. So my original forum, they were all 10 years older than me, because they all joined, around that standard age, which was 40, 42, 43. I was 33. And so they all graduated when I was in my 40s. And so, and unfortunately at that time, there wasn't as much track record of folks graduating into gold. We used to throw them out. And so maybe they continued on their journey. Maybe they didn't. And so most of them actually aged out and left the organization. We still get together quarterly, and so we stay connected. And then I joined a younger group where I'm sort of on the older side of the age bracket now, but we've been together for probably 10 years. And it's just been great. And that language of forum, the experience that you get out of there, it's really the secret sauce of YPO. And one of the interesting things is, as I've been circling back around with my older forum, I've actually had two of them rejoin the organization, because I've been talking about sort of some of the things we put in place, some of the new offerings that we have, and then also sort of the vision of the future, where the organization's going. And so they're actually like, this is super relevant to me, so I want to join the organization again. So my mission is to pull back in some of these great people that we lost when sort of pre WPO merger.
Awesome. A term that I've been hearing more and more, and it just seems like the last 6 months I've heard this more and more, but is I'm a YPO for life member. That's my mentality. I'm a YPO for life. For you, did you have a moment when you had that click where it's like, gosh, I'm a YPO for life? Was there ever a moment where you kind of felt like that click for you?
I'm not sure I've ever really thought about it in that terms, other than it's pretty integrated into sort of what am I I would say really everything that I do, whether it's my professional life. One of the real secret sauces of YPO is that we include families, as you know, and we're also focused on the whole person. And so, it just sort of is embedded in a lot of the things that we do. And so I don't think that I've ever really given a thought that it's something that I would stop. And so I guess the inverse of that, say, I've probably always viewed myself as being a lifelong member. And I think we've made it a lot easier for people to be engaged for a long term or a long time and throughout their life. And what's amazing is I see, this is probably the morbid side of it, but unfortunately I get an email when we have members pass away, and I'm amazed at how many obituaries mention YPO. And, to me, it's to be able to have made the cut to be in your obituary is pretty amazing. And so I think if you look at the impact we've had on people's lives, I think it's pretty staggering what we've been able to accomplish as an organization.
I think a way for me that the value and how deep it is in me was illustrated at graduation this year. I had one of our forum mates graduated, and I got selected to give the speech. And nice. I had no thoughts in my mind that I was going to get emotional or that it was going to be difficult to deliver. I was like more thinking like, how can I make this funnier? How do I kind of jab at some of our members with our inside jokes and stuff? And so, and halfway through, I see Bo is his name. I see Bo out in the crowd. He's on the end of the aisle, and he's got his arms crossed and he's looking at the wall. And I'm like, oh no, he's getting emotional. This guy doesn't get emotional, but I could tell that was his defense mechanism. He's looking at the wall. And then it just like punched me, and then I'm overwhelmed with emotion. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm up here in front of this whole crowd, like fighting back tears, and I had to take a couple of pauses. But in reflection, it was a really interesting way that showed to me just how much my forum means to me, and as a result, how much YPO has meant to me. And I don't think that that's uncommon. It was uncommon for me because I hadn't seen some of those happen, but it was a special moment, I think, for all of us. So
yeah, absolutely. I think that is, how many business organizations do you know where that would even be in the realm of possibility? It just doesn't happen. I think that's, if you think about, the ability to go deep, to build lifelong relationships with people, that's really the amazing part. And and this is kind of ties back to sort of what our strategy is today, which is a relentless focus on the member experience first and foremost. But it's really these three things that drive value for our members. One is forum. Two are the relationships that our members build, which is really what you're talking about. And a lot of those relationships are built in forum, but they're also just throughout the organization. And then we want to get exposed to new ideas and stay fresh and stay current. And so we're very, very focused on those three key drivers, and then sort of how do we push that through the organization. And so I think that, but it's those types of stories where you're like, you hear about, well, I've had like one of my forum mates when I first recruited him, he was like, I've got all the friends I need. I don't have time. I don't have, all the reasons why, like, he doesn't need YPO. And I'm like, well, just give it a shot and see, if you don't like forum, you can drop out or whatever. And he, and then he's best friends with everyone in the forum. It's transformed his life. He's looking at, whether it be business issues or personal issues or family issues in a different light. He's getting different insights. And so, it really is what makes it special.
Totally. I think I was told when I joined, for every hour you put into YPO, you're going to get an ROI on that of like 2 to 3 hours. And I think that's very true, because I'm amazed when you sit in forum and whatever the issue is, if it's mine, it's somebody else's, there's a cheat code sitting in that room. Somebody has already been through it and done it, and they'll save you 30 days, 60. I mean, they could save you tons of time or pain and anguish just from sharing their experiences. And that has just been, it was hard to almost understand at first, like, holy cow, like that really just, boom, problem solved. I was thinking I was going to be, chewing on this for the next quarter. And you walk out of that meeting and you're like, I can solve that tomorrow. Holy cow. Or they connect you to somebody that can help you. And so the power of that is phenomenal. Do you have a story so just going back to your early 30s and entering into this, do you have a story you can share where forum like just fast track something that, as a young leader, you were just overwhelmed with?
There probably are like a 1,000 examples. It seems like every forum, especially in those early days. I think the big transformation for me was sort of the ability to actually talk about some of the things you're struggling with. I think when you're in those roles earlier in your career, you just haven't had the opportunity or the courage to really be fully transparent and honest. And I think that was the big breakthrough, is that, like, being able to actually articulate the things that you're struggling with in a way that others can understand and help you. to me was the big issue, is that versus just having that wall up and saying, I'm just going to solve all this myself, or, if I were to talk about this, people might think of me differently or whatever. And you realize that actually the more you share, the more you get back, and, you kind of get what you give. And that's really been my message to new members always is you get what you give, is that the more you say yes, the more you're going to get back in return. And it's not, it isn't intended to be reciprocal, and there's really no expectation of reciprocity with that. But it is one of those things that, like, the more you put out there, the more you get. And so that's really been the special part. And, with that original group, they were a little bit older than me. And so, they were dealing with, kid issues before I was dealing with that, or, they're sort of just a little bit ahead. And, the other thing that I think is really amazing is that, when you're dealing with a challenge or whatever, it's just having like a different perspective on it slightly, and a different approach. It just expands your the set of options of being able to deal with it. So it's really just that mindset issue, saying, oh, well, actually I hadn't even thought about that. And so it just opens up all these different pathways that you wouldn't be able to open up on your own.
Yeah.
Or it would take you 10 times longer, to your point. It's just like a shortcut.
And I'm going to assume your forums have been the same, but I literally last night at 10 o'clock, I was chewing on something and texted one of my forum mates, like, hey, you free? He's like, yep, call. And I just said, hey, any blind spots? And I explained it to him. And, honestly, it was probably as much me talking as it was, anything. But I had to get it out there, right? I had to say it out loud. And then he's like, no, think about this. Oh, okay. But, think about that. Okay. And I just ended the call with, okay, any other blind spots I'm missing, from your perspective. And so, and he's always described for him as we're gas can buddies.
Right.
If you run out of gas, no matter where we're at, you call one of us, we're going to come bring a gas can to you. And I think that's a really great way to describe the bond and, thick as blood, thick as thieves, whatever, of forum.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and that is absolutely the amazing part of it, is that I know all those guys will just drop whatever they're doing to help. But to your point earlier, sometimes it's just the process of thinking it through and having to articulate it, that it actually exposes a whole bunch of things that it helps you figure it out almost on your own.
Yeah.
And then you get the benefit of actually saying, okay, well, here are some other alternatives, or these are some other ideas that you could consider. And, but what I've found is like that, getting prepared for a presentation is actually as valuable or more valuable than actually making the presentation.
Yes.
But sometimes you don't take the time to take a step back, create the white space to actually address whatever it is you're dealing with. And it's sort of this, we talk with our kids about this wall of worry. You have all these things that you kind of build up in your brain that are an impediment to it. But really, once you kind of crawl over that and realize that the wall isn't that big, and you can get through it. I think that's kind of the magic of some of this, is that you don't really, that's one of the nice things about performance, is that it forces you to block out sort of that half a day once a month. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of ways, it is white space that maybe you don't create otherwise.
Yeah. And you were talking about when you enter, our egos get in the way sometimes. We start to still be concerned about how we're presenting our business. And I'm supposed to know everything. I'm supposed to have all the answers. Right. That 5% on each end that you do and don't tell people, that's where forum really comes into play, is like that 5% that you're not willing to share with anybody else or be that vulnerable is so powerful. Let's go a little different direction now. So you've obviously transcended all the different, things with YPO. So I'm going to ask the dangerous question of, I'm assuming when you get the call to be CEO, there's a little bit of hesitation, because it's a big role. It's a leader of leaders. And so maybe if you can walk us through a little bit of your progression into this and what that journey's looked like of how you sit here today.
Yeah. So, I think my YPO journey has just been a series of yeses. And so, I got involved with the chapter pretty early. I did all of the chapter roles, started off in membership, and then sort of went through all the roles to regional chair, to chapter chair. And then I got involved in the region became the regional chair, and then was a workshop champion at GLC, and then ultimately joined the board. And so I did a whole bunch of different roles with the board. And, early on, I basically just told the chairman at the time, I was like, just kind of use me however you want to use me. I don't really have an agenda. I don't have a path that I'm really, need to go down. And so Pascal was the first chairman when I was a first year board member, and he asked me to be on a mentoring task force. And I really hadn't done a whole lot with mentoring, but again, it gave me this really sort of unique perspective of really the insights into the members and what they were looking for. And it's framed a lot of sort of my thinking on some of these issues. And then sort of did the board journey and was going to be, I was elected as deputy chair. And, unfortunately, when our CEO resigned, I just sort of raised my hand and said, I think I can have more impact as the CEO than as chairman. And so that's how I ended up in the role. And so I'm excited about it. We've got a great team. We have a great board. And we're aligned on what we're trying to accomplish. And I think I'm at this sort of unique point in that I have this deep champion experience and understanding of the organization from the champion side, the member side. And so it's fun to be able to sort of help coach and guide the management team, the professional team, through their journey on how we can improve this member experience. And we're doing a lot of things really, really well. And we've got some opportunities to really create this differentiated member experience in a way that we're not delivering that experience today. And so I think there's some interesting things that we're going to do over the next couple of years that will make the member experience much, much more engaging, especially obviously at the global level. But the organization is interesting. We have 10,000 people who give their time to the organization every year. It would be almost impossible to recreate that.
Yeah.
And it really is it's absolutely the secret sauce of YPO. The forum is really the glue that holds it all together. And it's that language, but it's having our members be willing to give their time to the organization that makes it the organization what it is. And so, our mission at YPO is to support our champions and our members to do all the amazing things that they do. And really our mission is for them to be the best leaders for the world that they can be. And we're here to enable that and to make sure that they have that path and journey to go down. And so, we're super, super focused on that every day is, how do we make that experience as frictionless as possible so that when our members decide to give their time, that it's fun, that it's engaging, that it's impactful. And so, that's our core goal, core mission.
Yeah. So what's maybe something you could share that's been a little bit surprising that even as a very tenured member, now sitting in this seat, you've learned that you're like, holy cow, I didn't know YPO did this, or there's maybe another corridor you didn't know existed that you now see.
I wish I could say that there was some secret corridor that I didn't know about. The good news is I went eyes wide open on a lot of this. And so I feel like I was pretty prepared for, sort of what I've found. I think the thing that's interesting, and we, as I talked to a lot of members and even our team, it's like, there's no wizard behind the green screen. It's just us back there. And so, sometimes we tend to make things seem like they're a little bit more complicated than they need to be. And the reality of it is they don't have to be. And so I think some of that is just, being really clear with both champions and with our team, and realizing that, we can make these changes. We can make there's nothing that's holding us back. The only people that are holding us back are ourselves. And so I would say that, some of that and some of that's just cultural, right? is that it is a big organization. It's complicated in some ways. In other ways, it shouldn't be very complicated. And so, how do we simplify it? How do we make it a little bit easier to understand? And as I said, a little bit, reduce the amount of friction when people are getting involved, so that it's seamless and frictionless for them. And so I think those are the big opportunities. But there aren't huge surprises. I think if you look at the strengths of the organization is, 95% of our members renewed this year. They renew every year. For an association like ours, that's an amazing renewal rate.
Yeah.
And to me, it's really a testament of what we're able to deliver. And I think that we can do some things that will enhance that significantly. But we're doing really well as an organization. We've got tons of opportunities. So
yeah, awesome. All right. Thinking about an only YPO experience that you can share, is there anything that just rises to the top for you that you think would be good to share?
Oh, I've had a bunch of them. Probably two, and actually they're both related to Jacksonville. So one of my former mates is a guy named Scott Franklin, and he is he actually was elected to Congress. He's in his second term, and YPO put on a one of those aircraft carrier trips. I don't know if you've heard about those, but and so he and I signed up for it. He didn't plan it, but it was planned by our chapter, and we landed on the JFK, and it was a ship. He was a Navy pilot, and he was stationed on the ship. And when we landed, he realized that the captain, the ship's surgeon, and maybe two or three other guys were in his squadron when he led the squadron on that ship. And so we ended up sort of hanging out with these guys that were his colleagues from a long time ago. And it was just one of those really just super interesting, engaging things to be able to have that experience. And so I would say that one definitely was one of the top ones. We landed on the carrier and took off. And so the tailhook is always a pretty amazing thing. For me, I think it's one of these, sort of must be present to win stories. Is it was during the sort of the depths of the recession, and I flew up. My wife and I, Treddy, her name is Treddy. She's a member of YPO as well, and we flew up to Jacksonville. We were meeting with the Fed, the Atlanta Fed president, a guy named Dennis Lockhart at the time, and one of our friends from Jacksonville picked us up, and he was asking me what I was doing. I was like, we just bought this Mercedes dealership, and I was sort of telling him about some of the struggles we were having. And he was like, I'm going on spring break from somebody from Mercedes, and he said, I'll find out what he does, and I'll make an introduction to you. And so I was like, yeah, that'd be great. And so, and by the way, I've always done turnarounds in my career, and so this was sort of a distressed deal. And one of the real challenges on the car dealership is getting approved as dealer. And I'd had some friends. I have friends that are car dealers, and one of them had been like a 20-year car dealer as a general manager and just bought his own store. And he was he was like 3 years in to owning the store and still hadn't been approved by Ford as the dealer. And so anyway, he called me up and said, hey, I'll introduce you to this guy. He ended up being one of the top 3 guys at Mercedes. I flew up and met with them, and I say, hey, look, this is what I'm dealing with. This is my game plan. This is what we think we can do the dealership. And he's like, since you're being honest with me, I think that's a challenge. I think the dealership's a challenge for us. I love your plan. I'll support you. And within a month, I had been approved as dealer, and had never owned a car dealership, never been in that business. And so, it's just one of those testaments to, if you kind of tell people what you're struggling with, you show up at events, and they will say, hey, I've got this idea, I've got this person, and they're willing to make the introduction and take the time to do it. And then also understanding what was going on with the recession with Dennis Lockhart was amazing to get sort of that Fed perspective at that time. And there was a really interesting takeaway from him. He said, he said recessions are extremely local. And so he said, we're sitting in Tampa and Miami, and Tampa and Miami were the epicenter of the real estate crisis at the time. Mm-hmm. And he said, you're sitting in Tampa and your view of the recession is incredibly different than Nashville. He said, they're not having a recession. And he said, the second thing that was really interesting is that, we survey all of these CEOs and leaders in our region. And he said like 90% of them say that they perceived others around them to be in a lot of distress. And then 90% of the respondents say that they're doing fine. So that when they ask, how are you doing? Oh, I'm good, but everybody else is. He says, so there's no way that you can have 90% of the people around you that are in trouble, but 90% of everyone who's observing it is okay. And so it's really that idea of sort of perception and reality. And so I've always sort of kept that with me. When you hear some of these stats and you hear some of this, this underlying sort of fear or whatever it is, a lot of that's just emotion that isn't necessarily based upon facts. But, obviously emotions do control markets, but they don't control fundamentals. And so I think just sort of keeping that idea in the back of our minds, I think is super, super helpful, especially when you're going through a lot of change. And listen, the world in general is going through a lot of change, and we can all feel it, I think, intuitively. And it's a difficult time to navigate. And I think that's really where YPO has the opportunity to create a lot of value. And I think that's where we create a lot of value, is helping our members navigate through change. And I was just reading, there's a PwC did a survey of CEOs. They surveyed I think there were 4,800 people in this survey. And PwC's client base is a little bit bigger. They're larger companies. But the thing that was really, really staggering to me is 40% of them said that their businesses won't be viable in 10 years. And so when you think about that and you correlate that to our organization, and the stress that comes along with that and the uncertainty that comes with that, I think we're feeling that. You overlay things like the culture wars that we're dealing with and the political, turmoil. There's attack on capitalism. There are a bunch of forces that are sort of happening that I think we can have a massive positive impact on that.
Yeah. I heard a stat that YPO is the equivalent of the third largest country from a GDP perspective.
Yeah.
That's crazy if you think about it. So there's over 30,000 members. And so I think to your point of that is like the people that are going to solve some of those problems are likely members and in a good position to do that.
Absolutely. And so I think that's an interesting stat, but it's not necessarily an actionable one.
Yeah.
And so to me, this idea of capitalism or commerce as a force for good, I think that's one of those things where, commerce is such a critical component to the health of the world. Is that if you think about really what we are, we are a very large, influential group of people collectively. But what we're really probably better at I think we're the largest job creation engine in the world. And, as a collective whole. And if you think about what jobs do for individuals, is they give them self-worth. They, in some cases, pull people out of poverty. They create healthy families. So healthy companies and families create better and healthier communities, healthier countries. And I was talking to a guy recently, and he said that there was it's the Thunderbird School of Business at Arizona. One of their mottos is borders frequented by trade seldom need soldiers. And I think that's which I thought was a really kind of a cool view. And it's really it's true. You think about when we have free trade across borders. And if you think about that, sort of correlate that to YPO, we're in 150 countries. We have 35,000 members. And even though, and we're really sort of at the core business people, right? But we create jobs which are creating healthy communities. We're trading with each other. We're sharing ideas with each other. And we have this ability to have this positive influence within our local communities, and that percolates up to the larger national scale and international scale. And I think that's, to me, that's really where we shine. And there are other groups that talk about how big they are and all that kind of stuff, but I think we're pretty unique in a couple of these things.
Right. Okay, let's think about events for a moment. So I've been in YPO 5 years, and this year I think I've been to 3 or 4, and everyone has been amazing. I went to the YPO Global Marketing Summit. I went to a deal network thing. Just got back from a regional board meeting. What's your experience? What's your view on events, and are they in a good spot? Do we need to make them better? What, as a member or a potential member, like what should I go into the mindset with for events?
Yeah, so I think that we do a lot of events, and I think a lot of them are incredible. And if you think about sort of that, from age 21 to 98, there's a lot of different needs within those groups, and so we have the iconic events that are amazing and high impact, and also a little bit more expensive and a little bit longer duration. And then we've got these network events and chapter events that are incredible. And so my advice to everyone is clearly go to all of your chapter events. Some of the best events I've been to have been chapter events. But pick 1 or 2 global events to go to. Some of the roundtables and the marketing event that you're talking about, they're incredible. And at the end of the day, they aren't that complicated, in the sense that it's about getting exposed to new ideas, and then it's really about all those conversations that you have with your members, the relationships that you build while you're there. It's the sparks of new ideas and concepts that come out of that. And so it is one of those, to me, it must be present to win. My wife went to the MIT AI event last week.
Yeah.
And she said it was absolutely amazing. And one of the takeaways she said the speakers were absolutely incredible. It was a perspective that you couldn't get anywhere else. But she said the best part was actually all those conversations that she had with other members. And,
yes.
And that's the magic of YPO. McKeel Hagerty used to say, there really is no YPO until YPOers get together. And so, that is at the core. It's just, let's get people together. Let's have some really interesting topics, and then go from there, and let them go. They'll do their thing.
You said what I was going to say, what your wife said. All these events I've been to, the content's great. It's amazing. But what I walk away with is the individual conversations. And I'll share a story with you. So at the YPO Global Marketing Summit, we're at a breakout, or like in between sessions, and there's a break. I'm getting a snack, running to the bathroom, whatever. And there's a guy, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? Where are you from? And he says, I'm from Vail, Colorado. I said, my sister lives in Eagle. And we get to talking. Well, it turns out his kids go to school with my sister's kids. And we had all these connections. Fast forward, I'm out seeing my sister over the 4th of July, and we have breakfast and reconnect, and we've done some business together, and stay in touch. And you think that was like just this one little like micro portion of the event, and we ended up talking a bunch more after that. But I probably had 5 or 6 of those conversations where I've had follow-ups, and we've kind of done our own little micro forum or just touch base or whatever. And so, it is the dinners, it's the interaction. Like, again, the content's amazing, but I always leave really re-energized, refueled, and from just those little interactions that happen in between all of that.
Yep, absolutely. But that's the essence of it.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. All right, so let's close things down here. Anything I didn't ask you that you think I should have?
This has been a very well thought out podcast, so I appreciate it. No, you've asked great questions, and definitely appreciate spending time with you today.
Yeah,
and also I appreciate you, just having a forum in which people can talk about their YPO experiences, because it is, it's an incredible organization. One of the real reasons why I wanted to come into this role is, we have this opportunity to set YPO up for success for another 75 years. And I think that, to me, the really the biggest goal for me personally is to make sure that the organization is here to give the same experience that I got when I was 33 years old. And we're doing that, and we're doing an incredible job with it. And so it'll be fun to see all the things we accomplish. But and thank you for one, stepping up at the chapter level, and also stepping up at the network level. It's great.
Oh, it's when you said, I said yes a lot. So I'll share this story as a closing one too. I just got back from this regional board meeting, and gentleman comes up to me that we know and for a network and said, "Would you step into this role?" And I think my response was, "I'm going to say yes. Let's talk later about what this all means, but it's a yes." Yeah. And so I literally didn't even know what it all meant, but the same attitude. I feel like you have to say yes to those things, because that first year you're kind of absorbing more, but then it very much becomes I want to feed into this system and make it better and better. And everybody's doing that. So it's just, that compounding interest of growth.
Absolutely.
So I think that's awesome. So thank you for agreeing to do this. I know you're an extremely busy individual, but this has been a great conversation. I think people are going to really love it. So thank you so much. And I hope we can, I'd love to buy you dinner sometime. We've got an office in Tampa, so I'm going to let you know when I am. And
you got to come see me. Absolutely.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, listeners. I hope you have enjoyed this as much as I have. It's been an absolute honor. So thank you. And until next time. Thanks for listening to the Growth Fire podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.